I'm going to read an opening statement and the documents we are not going to read every document. Somebody say, praise the Lord. They are there for just as support so that we're not making claims that are not substantiated somewhere. Does everybody have them in hand? After I read our opening statement, Secretary Don Wee will come and address you. And as I've already said, we are not enemies. We just disagree on some things. And I don't have to say it because I know this body of believers. But please be respectful and kind in your questions. Ask your questions if you have them. You have that right. But keep a decorum and a demeanor that's fitting of who we are. And I know you will. It doesn't need to be said. Are you ready to move forward? You have in front of you, this is a statement from me. I will read it mostly verbatim. I may add a few things along the way. But it's dated yesterday, March 17th, 2024. Can you hear me okay, even over my namesake? Yes? Last year, after many months of prayer and discussion with my wife and the board of MAG Church, I made a very difficult and painful decision to not renew my credentials with the Assemblies of God. And here I will add, you have to understand the weight and brevity and the enormity of that, as I have been 52 years and 9 months in the Assemblies of God. This is my people, and still is. Hear me. So this is not a lightweight decision. When I had a conversation with the board, I told them the reasons that I felt like it was time for me to leave the AG. And I've told the board on the record in that meeting that MAG Church was my first priority, and that I would not do anything that would cause division in this house or that would call my position as pastor into question with the board or the membership. That I had no desire or intention of leaving this church. This is home. We are called here. If they wanted me to renew my credentials, I would submit to their counsel and do just that. That I would I would not under any circumstances ask this church to leave the Assemblies of God, lead any movement. I would not lead any movement to remove this church from the Assemblies of God. And I would not advocate for us to leave the Assemblies of God. That if they wanted to leave, that they would be the ones that made the proposal to leave, and that they would make the case to the membership that it would never come from me. Why? Because they brought me here to pastor an Assembly of God church. Yes? At last year's annual business meeting, again, on the record, when we were changing the name to Mauriceville All Gospel Church, and as we were updating our bylaws, it was asked in the meeting if we planned to leave the Assemblies of God. The answer from me and the board was there was no intention of leaving, that we were simply updating our name to more accurately reflect who we wanted the community to see, and that we were indeed distancing ourselves from the denominational name for several reasons, including being tied for an already growing scandal in the South Texas network. The bylaw updates were of necessity to facilitate modern demands of media and electronic communication, as well as legal liabilities in the modern age. What I'm trying to say is our old bylaws were antiquated. And the new bylaws were taken from the General Council recommended bylaws and were largely adopted as written and recommended by the General Council of the Assemblies of God to the tune of 95% plus, maybe probably higher than that, word for word from their recommendation, with only a few changes to fit the local need. It was told that we were not moving towards disaffiliation, that we were making sure that the language of the bylaws left this local body in control of its own future. At no time has it been presented as an effort to leave. But there has long been an awareness that there could be a day that we would no longer be a part of the Assemblies of God. And I will add that preceded me being here. I did not write this down. I do not want it to be overtly personal, but I will tell you on the record that when I came here, there was a very strong resentment and aversion to the South Texas District and to the General Council of the Assemblies of God that predated my tenure. In fact, the board would verify, and the members that were here at the time, many of you have came since then, that not only was there a strong discontent and well, discontent's a good word, with the South Texas District and the General Council, but that in fact that I came and brought a reconciliatory tone between this church and the district. And that was on purpose. I did have people talk to me about moving here, and if I called them today, they would tell you that I told them point blank that the relationship will be built on its own merits, not their hearsay. That we had no intentions of being adversarial. In fact, we thought reconciliation is always in order. In fact, to the point that District Superintendent Tim Barker was invited to dedicate the very building you're in. Superintendent Barker was invited back with his friends. That, beside the point, was a very bad idea that Lanny Wolf was invited to this church and that he done great damage while he was here. He was still here with District Superintendent Barker at our invitation. And we in no way held him responsible for the damage that Lanny Wolf inflicted on this body. And he did. There are still at least a half a dozen to a dozen families that left that day and never came back because of what he foolishly said about Hispanic people in our service. That happened. Superintendent Barker and I had a great relationship until January of 2022 when I met him in Texarkana, and it was as if a light switch had turned off, and I still to this day do not know why. That's on record. Our last communication was January 8th of 2022 in a text message that I asked him if I had done anything to him. And his response was that he did not know what I was talking about, that all was well, that he was not easily offended, that he had thick skin, and that we were good. And from that day to this day, that is the last communication we have had. I did reach out. Having said that, it's still not personal. It really isn't. It was presented to the congregation last year that as a matter of conscience that I did not intend to renew my credentials with the Assemblies of God. And I also told them that if that was an issue, that was this congregation, I think everybody here would remember me telling you that I did not intend to renew, but if it was an issue, that you were welcome to call, text, write, come by, and that we would talk, and that I would do accordingly. It's a matter of record. On Wednesday, February 21st, 2024, I received an email from the South Texas Ministry Network Secretary, Don Wee, who is present today. And that letter is marked as number 1. As I said, we're not going to read everything word for word. But the letter, in my view and the board's view, and indeed the congregation, that we passed it out immediately. It came on a Wednesday. We presented it to the membership on a Wednesday to be read and considered later. It was personal in its language in that it was directly written to me. Usually the language, using the language of "you're no longer a minister in good standing," and to, quote, "remove you," etc. It's not written, although it was addressed to the leadership as well, it was written directly to me. It was an ultimatum in its tone. I think that's evident. And it had quite a bit of assumption involved in it. Again, I talked to Secretary, we understand that this is his position and my position. I'm not attacking him in any way. I don't want you to ever think that, nor you to think that. The letter should have been written directly to the board, as I was no longer indeed a minister in good standing with the Assemblies of God and to the membership of this body for them to deal accordingly. On February 26, 24, we responded with very specific questions to Secretary Wee. That's marked in number 2. Again, you have it. You can read it. We're not going to spend that much time on it. On March 1st, Secretary Wee responded, answering most of the questions vaguely, if not boilerplate. That's not an accusation, it's just a truth. Except for a detailed answer to a question that was not asked, which was dismissing the pastor. We understand completely what that means. That's Exhibit 3. On March 2nd, the board extended an invitation to the elected officials of the South Texas Ministry Network to attend this special meeting and discuss disaffiliation with the Assemblies of God. That is marked number 4. The invitation was accepted. And so here we are. While we deny and in no way agree that we were out of compliance with the language of the General Council bylaws as stated in Letter 1, we're not here today to argue against that. But we will note, however, that there are several, if not many, General Council affiliated churches in the South Texas District of the Assemblies of God that operate without a AG credentialed lead pastor. That's a fact. The district this district and all districts allow and appoint non-credentialed pastors at their convenience and as necessity as it suits them, because they need preachers. And I can testify firsthand that I was one of those at one time in another district. My first church, I was appointed and pastored without credentials for quite a while. We could go into this church, had a pastor that was only certified for 9 years. And the General Council bylaws to the letter says if a certified minister is elected to as a pastor, that they shall obtain license level within 3 years. That is the bylaw. It did not happen here. It does not happen a lot of places. We would argue this church has, as the General Council bylaw says, a pastor who is credentialed in good standing with the AG on this staff. And the reason I say that, I'm not splitting hairs. Legal documents, the words matter. The spirit of the law is never considered in a court. It's what it says. And the very bylaws that we adopted from the General Council has a section on pastors and divided out by pastor, staff pastors, and associate pastors. The General Council bylaw does not state a senior pastor or lead pastor. It states a pastor. We could contest it. We are not. We're just putting it out there. We also have elected officials pastoring non-AG churches, including our presbyter. I'm not speaking personally against Donnie Flippo. It's just a fact. We also have presbyters pastoring churches outside of their section. That's just a fact. And it would seem by the language of the first letter's demand that there was an intention through the requirement of an official of attending it would seem by the language of the first letter's demand that there was an intention to forego, I left out, the requirement for an official to attend the meeting and for us to simply send a copy of the resolution, minutes, and the vote. While we feel like the demand was made on us is a personal in nature and the bylaws are inconsistently applied and enforced, we wish to be on record as acting ethically and graciously in our response. After discussing the options given to us by the South Texas Assembly of God Network and considering the current crisis being faced by this district and fellowship, the board decided that recommending disaffiliation was in our best interest because systematic sexual abuse within this district and others was known dating back to at least 2018. The document marked number 5 is printed directly from the Assemblies of God General Council website. Paragraph 2 says, when a report first surfaced to the General Council and the National Chi Alpha in 2018. It is indisputable that it was known in 2018 by their own record. Some ministers, it seems, knew as far back as 2012. Certainly Eli Stewart and Eli Grotro did. That is a factual. They were leaders in this movement. That is exhibit number 6. Emails from Secretary Donna Barrett also prove that Doug Clay, Donna Barrett, E. Scott Martin, Tim Barker, Don Wee, Galen Clonch, and others were notified in 2018. That is marked 7. By the way, a presbyter contacted me in September. I don't know if he was acting on his own. I assume he was, to try to get me to be quiet and to dispute this email. But he acknowledges himself that this email's authenticity is not in dispute by anyone. This came from Secretary Donna Barrett. It is answering Monica. But I was also told that they could not get hold of Monica. And whenever I found that out, I tried to get hold of Monica and was talking to her within 4 minutes. So she's not hard to get hold of. It's also kind of skipping ahead on just a comment while I'm on it. It is being floated by some. I'm not saying it officially that Monica and others did not cooperate with the Foley investigation. I did not bother to print for the sake of paper, but I have the email chain from them documenting that they did talk to the investigators and that they did offer their testimony. They just requested that their own lawyers be present, which who wouldn't, and that the investigators never contacted them again. So that is that. The original emailer attempted on 3 different occasions to make the organization aware of the sexual predator, to no avail. That is marked number 8. One is dated June 4th, 2018. One is dated July 14th, 2018, and says second attempt at the top. The third one is dated December 2nd, 2019. And it simply says, as a courtesy, we're showing you again that Daniel Zavala is still yet operating, and we expect no response, etc. It's just a matter of record. The fact of the matter is even though there was knowledge that no one acted on anything, I'm not saying there wasn't an email or a phone call. I don't know. What I'm saying is, up until the point that Schiff and Stone, legal counsel, sent a demand letter to all of these universities in April of 2023 that Daniel Zavala was still in his home. He was still visiting Chi Alpha Ministries, that Eli Stewart, Gotro, Jason Bell, Josh Bell, and others were all still in their positions, still operating, and nobody was removed from anything prior to the legal notices going out and to the articles that began to be produced in the media. That's marked, demand letters are marked number 7. The original emailer attempted, we've covered that. And the media attention that followed, y'all have seen most of that. Then and only then was any scrutiny given to the sex cult, and that's what it is, that was operating within the ministries of the Assemblies of God. I know that's strong language, but I'm going to add to this language. When the Catholic Church was doing this, everybody could see it. When the Southern Baptist Church Convention was going through this, everybody could see it. And I'm telling the district officials and this body that everybody can see this, and the only people struggling over what to do and that it happened are Assemblies of God ministers and leadership. No, everybody else sees it very clearly. The language of the lawsuits that are coming are language of sex trafficking. And when you have a continued decade of people being brought to, the statement keeps being put out that they're not a credentialed minister, that they're not. Right to control and access are legal precedents that needs no certification, no documentation, none of those things. It's a lame, tired excuse for not acting. The fact of the matter is I've heard from literally dozens, I dare say hundreds, of missionaries that are on the world field from Chi Alpha and other Chi Alpha missionaries all over this country, including some from this district, that all testify that Daniel Savala's presence and influence is well known all over this. In fact, one was from the East Coast that's told me in writing that anyone that says that Daniel Savala didn't have influence or he's unknown is lying. That's their language. That he is very influential within the Chi Alpha ministries. I'll also add that it is not fair to the innocent missionaries that are in Chi Alpha that are doing a great job that they are not allowed to speak to this issue and that they are being painted with the same brush by the public. It's not right. And the only way to do that is to clear them. In between the times when the emails verify that the AG website, what the AG website admits, and what they were told about the abuse and the perversion that was occurring in the Chi Alpha campus ministries, and when any action was taken at all to stop Daniel Savala's access to the students, at least in the time between 2018 and April of 2023, it's undeniable that at least 3 minor children were molested by him. These 3 boys were allegedly victimized as a direct result of the inaction of elected leadership of the Assemblies of God to follow through on the knowledge that they admit they had at the time. 2 of them were sons of an active Chi Alpha missionary. One of them, who filed suit in North Texas a few weeks ago, was 16 at the time. Actually 13 at the time. One was 11 and one was 13. All of them were molested since 2018. We are not in any way insinuating that these leaders were predators. It's just a failure and breakdown of communication and leadership. That's all. And I don't say that's all dismissively. It's big. According to the training on their own website, South Texas leadership knew that proper legal protocol and the consequences of not acting on South Texas leadership knew the proper legal protocol and they knew the consequences of not acting on known information. If you would please play the clip from not Doug Clay, the other one. Play
Everybody,
it.
Look at Pastor Don and say thank you. I want you to know that before you came here today, if you ignored some of those things in your church and maybe didn't even know they were a problem, you were probably negligent as the leaders. But Pastor Don really wanted you to know better. So after today, since you came here and you've learned all about these great things, if something goes wrong in your church after you've attended the seminar, you've signed the paperwork, now you're going to be grossly negligent, which is a different legal term and a different level of accountability. They can come after your own personal house if you're a board member or a pastor. If you're grossly negligent, it means you knew there was a chance something could go wrong and you chose to do nothing about it. Where before you were just negligent and they would go after the church's property. It's in debt anyway, it doesn't make a difference. But now all your board members are also grossly negligent because you knew to be better and you chose not to do anything. What if you...
I will say that the training is correct, it's right, it's on point, and I think it speaks for itself. Also, according to the training manuals handed out at the very same meeting, this meeting was advanced ministry training for ordination candidates. Included in the training packet for that meeting was a letter from Secretary Wee. Where's my stack? Here it is. I've got it. It's marked number 11. This is still, as of last night, available on the South Texas Assembly of God's website. This is page 6 of the manual. It's from Secretary Wee. I will tell you that everything on the page is right. We agree that the instruction is correct. Although presbyters and many others has tried to get me to be quiet, I'm not going to read all of it, but I will tell you that it was. This is concerning sexual abuse and violence and harassment in the church. It says we mourn every victim. Sexual exploitation and abuse are the most intimate forms of injustice. One not only violates the body but wounds the deepest places of the soul. As followers of Jesus who proclaim that the kingdom of God ushers in redemption and healing of both victims and exploiters, we cannot remain silent, and we agree. And Christ himself would not remain silent, nor can we. God is not silent about his love for all of his creation. He demands justice. He charges his people to be a voice of those who cannot speak for themselves, and mandates his church proclaim liberating truth. We are to engage the world as bearers of grace, forgiveness, and freedom. This next paragraph says our commitment in this area of sexual hurt, abuse, and exploitation to bring justice, accountability, and healing and restoration to both victim and perpetrator. We're not going to read the rest. It gives instructions on how to handle a child complaint as well as an adult complaint, and we agree with it. We just do not think it was followed. As of today, multiple Chi Alpha missionaries, 6 or more, have been dismissed. Multiple arrests have been made. One leader in Springfield was allowed to resign, God knows why. Yet none of the elected leadership have stepped down after a catastrophic failure to supervise the ministries under its charge. And there seems to be no intention of releasing the results of the independent investigation commissioned by the district and paid at our expense. That is marked number 12. It's from earlier this year. Actually, number 11 is. Number 12 was sent out about 2 weeks ago, explaining that it was over. Several have been dismissed. Nobody else was inquired of. I'll remind you that many people were not interviewed, and that this seems to be intended to be the end of the discussion. That's fine. Also attached, some of you don't have it. We will share it with anybody that wants it. There's number 13. That is the lawsuit filed just this week against the General Counsel of the South Texas District of the Assemblies of God, Chi Alpha Campus Ministries, and Chi Alpha Ministries at Huntsville. The victim was a legally blind young man who had to be driven to those meetings. The 14th exhibit is a lawsuit filed in North Texas by a minor child. I included it because some of those leadership in Eli Stewart and Gotro cross over district lines. It's part of the same mesh of catastrophe. That's what it is. Again, the AG's website verifies knowledge. And if you have the clip from the General Counsel, there's one more thing I want to show you. To date, the message on the website and General Superintendent Doug Clay, speaking from the chair, the General Counsel in session, and out of his own mouth says it wants it to be a matter of record, described this scandal as a hiccup in the course of ministry, and offered prayer for Chi Alpha Ministries while never acknowledging victims. No prayer was offered for the victims, none of the above. We understand liabilities. We understand the world we live in. We understand a higher biblical mandate to do what it went rogue. It gives me no pleasure to feel abandoned by my district and my council. But on a personal level, that's exactly what I feel. And it gives me no pleasure to be leading a meeting today to lead the only thing I've ever known. But that's where we're at. Again, I want to say to Secretary Wee and Tim Barker, the Presbytery, the General Counsel, I mean you no personal harm. I don't think you're criminals. Failure in leadership to the likes that you can't continue to lead. I don't feel like you're bad men. Just made a terrible mistake. With that being said, we're going to give the floor to Secretary Wee. Please be attentive. Listen to him. At the end, when you have comment or questions, please be respectful, congenial. Show the love of God. We ask him. Secretary Wee, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Pastor Armstrong. Thank you for the leadership of this church. There's ongoing investigations into all of this that is happening. We are able to reveal what we can reveal because of legal issues, because of many victims who've requested anonymity. And so that's where we are. That's where we are. And I apologize. But thank you so much for having this meeting. I'm here to oversee your legal vote. Not here to try to sway you, not here to get in a debate and an argument. In fact, I'm not going to entertain or try to answer your questions at this time. But I'm here to oversee your legal vote, and so far your processes are top. And so that's all I have to say. I think at this time, Pastor JR is going to continue the balloting for this decision.